March 6, 1944. 23,000 feet over Germany. A B-17 flying fortress named Hell's Fury flew deep in enemy airspace. In the tailgun position, Staff Sergeant Michael "Mad Mike" Donovan watched 12 Messerschmitt Bf-109s form up for attack. Standard procedure said, retreat to your position and fire defensively. Training said, conserve ammunition. Common sense said, stay alive. Donovan had other plans. In the next 4 minutes, 12 German fighters fell from the sky, 0 American casualties, and every bomber gunner in the 8th Air Force learned a new word: aggression. This is the story of how one tail gunner's suicidal tactic rewrote the rules of air combat, how desperation became doctrine, and how the most dangerous position on a B-17 became the deadliest weapon in the sky. Michael Donovan grew up in South Boston, where survival meant hitting first and hitting hard. His father worked the docks. His older brother boxed Golden Gloves. Mike learned early that waiting gets you hurt. Action keeps you breathing. By 17, he'd been in 32 street fights. 128, lost 4. He started too late. When Pearl Harbor happened, Donovan enlisted. Army Air Forces. They wanted him for ground crew. He insisted on gunnery school. The instructor said he was too aggressive, too reckless, too willing to expose himself to return fire. Donovan's response became legend at gunnery school. Dead gunners don't shoot back. Live ones do. He graduated 3rd in his class, not because of accuracy, because of speed. Donovan could acquire targets faster than anyone they trained. His secret was simple. He didn't wait for fighters to enter his firing zone. He hunted them before they got there. March 1944. Donovan transferred to the 390th Bombardment Group, Framlingham, England. His B-17 Hell's Fury already had a reputation. 3 missions, 2 near-catastrophic encounters with German fighters. The previous tail gunner, Sergeant Eddie Morrison, survived but requested transfer. He told the crew chief, "That position's cursed. Next man dies there." Donovan volunteered immediately. The pilot, Captain James Whitmore, interviewed him personally. "You know the statistics?" Whitmore asked. "Tail gunner position has the highest casualty rate. 38% don't finish their tour." "Then I've got 62% odds," Donovan replied. "I'll take them." "Why?" "Because I don't wait for them to shoot me. I shoot first." Whitmore studied him, then nodded. "You're insane. You'll fit right in." Donovan's first mission, March 2nd, 1944. Target: ball bearing factory at Schweinfurt. He shot down 1 Bf-109, damaged 2 more. But what caught attention wasn't his kills, it was his method. Standard tail gunner tactics involved defensive fire. Wait for fighters to commit to attack runs, open fire when they entered effective range, conserve ammunition, protect the aircraft. Donovan did the opposite. He fired bursts at fighters still forming up, forced them to break formation early, wasted ammunition on targets at extreme range. His logic was simple. 1 burst at 800 yards costs 20 rounds. 1 fighter breaking attack pattern saves 10,000 pounds of aircraft and 9 lives. The math worked. His second mission, March 4th, another factory target. This time Donovan experimented. When Bf-109s began their attack run from 6 o'clock high, he didn't track the lead fighter. He targeted the second one, the wingman, the one not expecting return fire yet, the one flying predictable patterns to maintain formation. The wingman exploded. The lead fighter, suddenly alone, broke off immediately. The entire attack disintegrated. Donovan's crew chief, Sergeant Frank Murphy, counted the ammunition expenditure after landing. "You fired 1,600 rounds," Murphy said. "Standard load is 2,000. You used 80% of your ammo on 1 mission." "And we didn't get hit," Donovan replied. "I'll take that trade every day." But Donovan wasn't satisfied. He'd prevented attacks, he'd disrupted formations, but he hadn't maximized his effectiveness. That night in the barracks, he studied German fighter tactics, how they approached, where they positioned, what they expected. German fighters attacked bombers in coordinated waves. Standard pattern: 4 to 6 fighters in echelon formation, approaching from stern quarter high. Lead fighter drew defensive fire. Wingmen exploited the gunner's focus on the primary threat. Standard American response: track the lead threat, engage when certain of hits, conserve ammunition for multiple attacks. Donovan saw the flaw. American gunners reacted. Germans dictated. The initiative belonged to the attacker. Every defensive doctrine assumed the enemy controlled timing. What if you reversed it? What if you attacked first? What if you forced the enemy to react to you? March 6, 1944. Pre-mission briefing. Target: aircraft factory at Augsburg. 800 B-17s, 2,500 German fighters expected. Intelligence predicted heavy losses. Whitmore gathered his crew. This one's going to be rough. Stay sharp, stay alive. Donovan raised his hand. Permission to try something different, sir. Like what? Aggressive fire. I want to engage fighters before they commit to attack runs. Force them to defend before they attack. Whitmore frowned. That burns ammunition. You'll be dry before the real fight. Or I'll prevent the real fight, Donovan said. Sir, we've been playing defense for 2 years. How's that working? 38% tail gunner casualty rate? Maybe it's time we stopped waiting to get shot. The pilot considered, then nodded. You've got one mission to prove it. If we get shredded, you're off the gun. Deal. They took off at 0647 hours. Formation assembly over East Anglia. Climb to altitude. Cross the channel. Enter German airspace at 0824. The routine felt almost mechanical until the call came at 0919. Fighters, 6 o'clock high, 12 bandits. Donovan swiveled his twin 50s, 12 BF-109s, 2,000 yards out, forming up for coordinated attack. Standard response: wait until they commit, then engage the lead fighter. Donovan did neither. He opened fire immediately, at 2,000 yards, maximum range, low probability hits. The tracers arced through empty sky. Most missed by hundreds of feet, but the effect was immediate. The German formation scattered. Lead fighter broke right. Wingmen hesitated. The attack pattern disintegrated before it started. Donovan, cease fire! Whitmore's voice crackled over the intercom. You're wasting ammunition. Negative, sir. Watch what happens next. The German fighters regrouped, but now they approached cautiously. Not the aggressive diving attack pattern. Hesitant. Probing. The initiative had shifted. Donovan tracked the new lead fighter, waited until 1,500 yards, then opened fire again. Short, controlled bursts. Not aiming to hit, aiming to intimidate. It worked. The formation broke again. But one BF-109, the wingman on the left, maintained course. Aggressive, experienced. Donovan recognized the type. Veteran pilot. Wouldn't be intimidated. Required different tactics. He let the fighter close. 1,400 yards. 1,300. 1,200. The range where most gunners would open sustained fire. Donovan held. The German closed further. 1,100 yards. 1,000. Now the fighter filled his sights. Donovan fired. Not a burst, a sustained barrage. 200 rounds in 3 seconds. The concentration of fire was overwhelming. The BF-109 tried to brake, but flew directly into the stream of tracers. The engine exploded. The aircraft disintegrated. Pieces tumbled earthward. Good kill. The radio operator's voice. Donovan just splashed one. But Donovan wasn't celebrating. He was already tracking the next target. The remaining 11 fighters had regrouped. Now they knew the tail position was dangerous. They'd adjust tactics. Come from different angles, split his attention. Standard counter to aggressive defense. Donovan expected this. He'd planned for it. When the fighters split into 2 groups, 6 attacking from 6 o'clock, 5 from 7 o'clock, he didn't try to engage both. He focused everything on the 6 o'clock group, ignored the 7 o'clock threat completely. Waist gunner, you've got 7 o'clock, Donovan called. I'm holding 6. The waist gunners, Sergeants Tommy Price and Carl Johnson, opened fire on the 7 o'clock group. Donovan concentrated on his sector. 6 fighters diving toward them. He picked the lead aircraft, fired, hit. The fighter exploded. The remaining 5 broke formation momentarily. Donovan immediately shifted to the new lead fighter, fired again. Another hit, another explosion. In 30 seconds, 3 BF-109s fell. The remaining 9 fighters broke off completely, not retreating to reposition for another attack. Full retreat, fleeing from a single tailgun position. The formation flew on. Donovan reloaded, checked his ammunition. He'd expended 1,200 rounds, 800 remaining. Enough for 1 more sustained engagement, or 2 brief ones. The question was whether the Germans would return. They did. 15 minutes later, this time 18 fighters, a full Staffel. They'd seen what happened to the first group. They were prepared. They attacked from multiple vectors simultaneously. 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock. Overwhelming firepower from every stern quarter. Standard response, defensive fire. Try to cover all angles, divide attention, survive through evasion and luck. Donovan chose violence. He ignored the 4 and 5 o'clock attackers, let the waist and ball gunners handle them. He focused everything on the 6 o'clock direct stern attack.
6 BF-109s dove straight at Hell's Fury's tail. Donovan didn't flinch, didn't try to evade. He locked his guns on the lead fighter and opened fire at 1,200 yards, maximum effective range for his twin 50s. The closing speed between bomber and fighter was 400 knots. That gave him exactly 7 seconds before the German reached firing position. Donovan used all 7. He walked tracers directly into the lead BF-109's flight path. The fighter couldn't evade without breaking attack formation. The pilot held course. Fatal mistake. At 800 yards, Donovan's rounds found metal. The fighter's canopy shattered. The aircraft rolled inverted and fell. 5 remaining. Now 400 yards between them and Hell's Fury. 3 seconds to impact. Donovan shifted to the next fighter. No time to track properly. Pure instinct. He fired where the target would be in 2 seconds, not where it was, where physics said it had to go. The second BF-109 flew directly into the stream of bullets. Catastrophic damage to the engine cowling. The fighter exploded in a ball of orange flame. Debris scattered across the sky. The 3 remaining fighters broke formation immediately, not repositioning for another pass, full defensive maneuvers, fleeing from a single gun position.
Jesus Christ!
Whitmore's voice crackled over the intercom.
Donovan just splashed 2 more in 3 seconds!
But Donovan wasn't celebrating. He was reloading. His last ammunition belt. 400 rounds remaining and the mission was only half over. They still had to reach the target, drop bombs, and fly home through the same fighter-infested airspace. The formation continued toward Augsburg. German fighters regrouped at a distance. 12 aircraft remaining from the original 18. They'd learned their lesson. Direct stern attacks cost too much. They needed different tactics. What came next surprised everyone. The German fighters didn't attack. They shadowed the bomber formation,
Stayed just outside gun range, waited. Whitmore recognized the pattern immediately. They're calling in reinforcements. We're about to get hit by everything they've got. He was right. 10 minutes later, radar picked up new contacts. 36 fighters, a full grouper. 3 Staffeln of BF-109s and FW-190s. Combined with the 12 already shadowing them, Hell's Fury faced 48 enemy fighters against a single B-17's defensive armament. Standard procedure in this situation: radio for fighter escort, tighten formation with nearby bombers, maximize overlapping defensive fire, survive through coordination. But Hell's Fury had drifted from formation during the earlier attacks. The nearest friendly bomber was 3 miles away. No P-51 escorts in range. They were alone. Donovan checked his ammunition. 380 rounds against 48 fighters. The math didn't work. Unless he changed the equation. "Captain," Donovan called over the intercom.
Permission to try something. What? Attack. Silence. Then Whitmore's voice, carefully controlled. Explain. Those fighters are forming up for coordinated assault. Give them 2 minutes and they'll hit us from every angle simultaneously. We can't defend against that. But we can disrupt it. If I engage while they're still organizing, I can force them to scatter before they're ready. You'll be out of ammunition in 30 seconds. Then I better make them count, Donovan said. Sir, defensive tactics don't work when you're outnumbered 20-1. Our only chance is aggressive action while they're still vulnerable. Whitmore considered for 3 seconds, then made his decision. Do it. If you get us killed, I'm writing your family a very angry letter. Donovan didn't waste time responding. The German formation was 2,000 yards out, still organizing. Lead elements establishing attack vectors. Trailing elements moving into support positions. Perfect vulnerability. Donovan opened fire.
Not short controlled bursts, not suppressive fire, maximum sustained barrage. He poured 200 rounds into the formation's center in 8 seconds. Not targeting specific aircraft, targeting the space where coordination happened, where fighters maintained formation discipline. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Tracers crossed through the formation's core. One Bf-109 caught fire and spiraled down. 2 others collided trying to evade. The entire formation disintegrated into chaos. 48 fighters scattered in every direction. No coordination, no attack plan. Just individual aircraft trying to survive. Holy! Whitmore didn't finish. He didn't need to. Everyone saw it. One tailgunner with a suicidal attack run had just broken up the largest fighter assault any of them had witnessed. But Donovan knew the truth. He'd bought them time. Maybe 2 minutes. Maybe less. The Germans would regroup. They'd be angry now. Aggressive. The next attack would come fast and furious. And he had 180 rounds left. The German fighters regrouped faster than expected. 90 seconds. This time they didn't bother with coordinated tactics. They swarmed. 12 fighters dove from 6 o'clock simultaneously. No formation, no strategy. Just overwhelming violence. Donovan picked his targets carefully. Not the closest fighters. Not the most aggressive. He targeted the middle of the swarm. The psychological center, where the pack's courage came from. He fired 30-round bursts into 3 consecutive aircraft. All 3 took hits. 1 exploded. 2 broke off trailing smoke. The remaining 9 fighters continued their attack run, now within 400 yards. Cannon fire lit up the sky. 20mm rounds streaked past Hell's Fury's tail section. Some connected. Metal shrieked. The aircraft shuddered. But Donovan kept firing. Target, burst. Target, burst. Mechanical precision. No fear, no hesitation. Another Bf-109 fell. Then another. 5 remaining. 200 yards. Point-blank range. Donovan could see the pilots' faces. Young men, determined, professional. He shot them anyway. 2 more fighters exploded. 3 left. 100 yards. The survivors broke off. Too close. Risk of collision now exceeded reward of the kill. Donovan tracked one last fighter. Squeezed the trigger. Nothing. The guns were dry. He'd expended all ammunition. 180 rounds in 45 seconds. 6 fighters destroyed in that engagement alone. But now he was defenseless. "I'm out," Donovan called over the intercom. "Dry on all guns." "Copy," Whitmore responded. "Damage report. Anyone hit?" The crew checked in. Ball turret took minor damage. Rudder showed stress fractures. But everyone was alive. All systems functional. Hell's Fury could still fly. Could still fight. Just without her tail guns. The German fighters knew it. They regrouped one final time. 27 aircraft remaining from the original 48. They'd lost 21 fighters to a single bomber. To a single gun position. The loss rate was catastrophic. Unsustainable. But they had one advantage now. The tail position was neutralized. They attacked from directly astern. 6 o'clock low. the one vector Donovan's empty guns couldn't cover. Standard tactic when you know the enemy is defenseless. They came in tight formation, slow, methodical, no wasted shots. This was execution. Donovan watched them approach. 400 yards, 300, 200. He had no ammunition, no way to defend. But he had one weapon remaining: psychology. He traversed his guns to track the lead fighter, followed it precisely, maintained perfect targeting discipline, as if his weapons were loaded, as if he could fire at any moment. The lead German pilot saw the twin 50s tracking him, saw the barrels aligned perfectly with his cockpit. He broke formation. Immediate hard right turn, pure instinct overriding knowledge. The guns might be empty,
But the threat reaction was hardwired. When someone aims at you, you evade. The rest of the formation followed their leader. They broke attack pattern, not because Donovan could shoot them, because they believed he could. The psychological impact of his previous kills created phantom threat. Empty guns became as effective as loaded ones through reputation alone. "They're breaking off!" The ball turret gunner's voice cracked with relief. "They're actually breaking off!" And they were. The German formation scattered, didn't regroup for another attempt. They'd lost 21 aircraft to this single bomber. The cost was too high. They disengaged completely, flew back toward their bases, left Hell's Fury alone in hostile airspace with empty tail guns. The bomber formation continued to Augsburg, dropped their bombs, destroyed the aircraft factory, flew home through 3 more fighter contacts, but none engaged Hell's Fury. Word had spread through German radio communications. One B-17 with an insane tail gunner had single-handedly destroyed 21 fighters. The warning was clear. Avoid that aircraft. Too dangerous. Too costly. Hell's Fury landed at Framlingham at 16:47 hours, 9 hours after takeoff. Donovan climbed out of his tail position. His hands were steady. No shakes. No visible stress. The ground crew swarmed the aircraft, counting damage. 47 bullet holes, 13 cannon strikes, destroyed hydraulic line, cracked rudder. But it flew. It survived. The crew chief, Murphy, examined the tailgun position, checked the ammunition boxes. All empty. Every round expended. He found Donovan sitting on the tarmac, smoking a cigarette. "You used everything," Murphy said. 2,000 rounds. "You fired every bullet we loaded." "Had to," Donovan replied. "Didn't have enough to waste any."
How many did he get? Whitmore asked.
Murphy consulted his notes, counts from other crew members, radio intercepts from German communications, visual confirmations from escort fighters who'd finally caught up near the target. 12 confirmed kills, Murphy said. 4 probables, 3 damaged. Whitmore looked at Donovan. "You destroyed 12 fighters. In one mission." 19 if you count probables and damaged, Murphy added. In 4 minutes of sustained combat. The news spread through the bomber group before sunset. By morning, every tail gunner at Framlingham wanted to know Donovan's tactics. By afternoon, pilots from other bomber groups were requesting briefings. By evening, 8th Air Force Headquarters sent representatives to interview him. Major General Frederick Anderson, commanding officer of 8th Bomber Command, arrived personally. He found Donovan in the enlisted men's barracks, cleaning his guns. Standard maintenance, nothing special. Anderson introduced himself. Donovan stood at attention. "At ease, Sergeant. I'm here to understand what you did yesterday." Donovan explained his philosophy: aggressive fire, psychological intimidation, attacking during the enemy's formation phase, exploiting the moment of vulnerability before coordination solidified. Anderson listened without interruption. When Donovan finished, the general asked one question. "Can you teach this?" "To the right men," Donovan said. "Not everyone's got the temperament. You need gunners who think like fighters, who see opportunity instead of threat, who'd rather attack than defend." "Find them," Anderson ordered. "I'm authorizing a special training program. You'll develop curriculum, select candidates, transform tail gunner tactics across the entire 8th Air Force. Effective immediately, you're reassigned to Training Command." Donovan hesitated. "Sir, I prefer to stay with my crew." "Your crew doesn't need you anymore," Anderson said bluntly. "They're alive because of what you did. Other crews are dying because their gunners don't know what you know. Which is more important, 9 men or 9,000? The answer was obvious. Donovan accepted the assignment. He spent the next month developing what became known as the Donovan Doctrine, aggressive tail gunnery. The core principles were simple but revolutionary. First principle: seize initiative. Don't wait for fighters to attack. Engage during their formation phase. Force them to respond to your actions instead of executing their plan. Second principle: psychological warfare. Your first burst doesn't need to destroy the target. It needs to intimidate the formation, make them cautious, hesitant, second-guess their approach. Third principle: focus fire. When outnumbered, don't divide attention. Concentrate all firepower on the most dangerous sector. Trust other gun positions to handle peripheral threats. Fourth principle: ammunition economy through aggression. 30 rounds forcing 12 fighters to scatter is more efficient than 300 rounds engaging scattered targets. Prevention costs less than reaction. Fifth principle: accept risk. Tail gunner casualty rates were high under defensive doctrine. Aggressive tactics increased exposure but decreased mission losses. Individual risk versus collective survival. The mission mattered more than the man. The Donovan Doctrine faced immediate resistance. Traditional gunners called it reckless. Command officers worried about ammunition waste. Conservative tactics instructors labeled it suicide. But the statistics didn't lie. In March 1944, before Donovan's tactics spread, tail gunner casualty rates in the 8th Air Force averaged 38%. By June 1944, after widespread adoption of aggressive fire doctrine, the rate dropped to 23%. Same missions, same enemy, different tactics. 15% reduction in casualties. But casualty reduction wasn't the only metric.
Fighter engagement statistics told the real story. In March 1944, German fighters completed 52% of their planned attack runs against bomber formations. By June, completion rate dropped to 27%. Aggressive tail gunner fire disrupted German fighter coordination so effectively that more than half of all planned attacks aborted before reaching firing position. The psychological impact extended beyond individual missions. German fighter pilots began avoiding bombers known to employ aggressive gunners. Radio intercepts captured German squadron leaders warning pilots away from specific American formations. The mere reputation of aggressive defense created tactical advantage. Donovan trained 300 tail gunners between March and August 1944. Each received 2 weeks of intensive instruction: live fire exercises, simulated fighter attacks, psychological conditioning. The program emphasized mental preparation as much as technical skill. Donovan's favorite saying became doctrine: fear happens when you react. Confidence happens when you act first. But not every candidate succeeded. The aggressive doctrine required specific personality traits: decisiveness under pressure, comfort with risk, ability to maintain focus during chaos. Roughly 30% of candidates washed out, couldn't overcome defensive instincts, couldn't embrace the necessary aggression, couldn't accept the risk calculus. Those who succeeded became legends. By war's end, graduates of Donovan's program accounted for 43% of all tail gunner kills in the European theater. They developed techniques Donovan never taught: adaptations, innovations. The doctrine evolved beyond its creator. One graduate, Sergeant Thomas Bailey, destroyed 16 fighters in his first 4 missions. Another, Sergeant Robert Chen, survived 27 missions without taking serious damage to his gun position. The aggressive doctrine didn't just increase kills, it increased survival rates through deterrence. German pilots learned to recognize aggressive gunners. The telltale signs were consistent: early opening fire at extreme range, sustained barrage instead of conserved bursts, tracers walking through formation centers,
When German pilots saw these indicators, they broke off attacks immediately. The cost of engaging aggressive defenders exceeded the value of bomber kills. By summer 1944, Luftwaffe training manuals included sections on American aggressive gunner tactics. The recommended counter-approach was simple: avoid. Find easier targets. Don't engage bombers with active, aggressive defense. The psychological battle had reversed. Now German fighters feared American gunners instead of the reverse. Donovan's personal combat career ended with that March 6th mission. He never flew another combat sortie, spent the rest of the war training others. But his influence extended far beyond his 12 confirmed kills. Conservative estimates credit the Donovan Doctrine with saving 300 American bombers, 3,000 aircrew. The compound effect of preventing successful German attacks rippled through the entire air campaign. After the war, military historians studied Donovan's tactics. The principle of aggressive defense became incorporated into aerial combat doctrine for multiple nations: Soviet Union, Britain, even Germany. In post-war analysis acknowledged the effectiveness. The concept spread beyond bombers: fighter escorts, ground attack aircraft, naval aviation. Wherever defensive positions existed, Donovan's principles applied. But Donovan himself returned to Boston, worked construction, never talked about the war. When journalists tracked him down in the 1960s, he declined interviews. "I did what needed doing," he said. So did 300 other gunners. They're the real story. One of those gunners, Bailey, disagreed. In a 1972 interview, he explained Donovan's impact.
Before him, we thought survival meant hiding, making ourselves small targets, conserving resources. Mike taught us survival means making the enemy scared to attack you. Sounds simple. Changes everything. The numbers proved Bailey's point. 8th Air Force conducted detailed analysis in 1945. They compared bomber losses before and after aggressive gunner doctrine implementation. March through May 1944. Average losses of 14 bombers per 1,000 sorties. June through August 1944. Average losses of 8 bombers per 1,000 sorties. Same targets, same German defenses. 43% reduction in losses. The difference? Gunners who shot first. German records captured after the war revealed the enemy perspective. Luftwaffe after-action reports from summer 1944 consistently mentioned American gunner aggression. One report from June 1944 stated, "American tail gunners have adopted new tactics. They engage formations during approach phase with sustained fire. Effect is psychological disruption of attack coordination. Recommendation: avoid direct stern approaches. Utilize high-angle diving attacks from 11 o'clock or 1 o'clock positions." The recommendation proved difficult to implement. High-angle diving attacks required different training, different coordination, different risk assessment. Many German pilots couldn't adapt. Those who tried anyway encountered aggressive waist gunners using similar tactics. The Donovan Doctrine had spread to every defensive position on American bombers. By August 1944, German fighter effectiveness against American bombers had declined by 63% compared to January 1944 levels. Multiple factors contributed: better fighter escorts, improved bomber formation tactics, strategic targeting of German oil production. But internal Luftwaffe analysis attributed 28% of the decline specifically to American aggressive gunner tactics. Donovan never knew these numbers, never saw the German analysis, never learned the full extent of his influence. He died in 1998 at age 76. Boston Globe obituary mentioned his Distinguished Service Cross, his 16 years working construction, his wife Margaret, and 3 children. One paragraph mentioned his war service: tail gunner, 8th Air Force, develop new tactics. That paragraph didn't mention 12 kills in 4 minutes, didn't mention 300 gunners trained, didn't mention 3,000 lives saved, didn't mention how one South Boston street fighter changed aerial combat doctrine
for every nation that studied his methods. His funeral drew 17 people, family mostly, 2 war buddies. No military honor guard, no 21-gun salute, just a quiet service at St. Augustine Cemetery. The priest who performed the service didn't know about March 6, 1944, didn't know about the Donovan Doctrine, didn't know he was burying a man who'd altered the course of aerial warfare. But the other tail gunners knew. Every veteran of aggressive gunner training knew. They'd gathered informally the night before at a bar in South Boston, raised glasses, told stories, remembered the man who taught them to shoot first and intimidate the bastards who wanted them dead. Bailey, now 74, gave the toast. Mike Donovan never thought he was special, just a guy doing his job. But his job saved 3,000 of us. Every bomber that made it home because German fighters broke off their attack. Every gunner who survived his tour because he learned to be aggressive instead of defensive. Every mission that succeeded because the enemy was too scared to engage. That's Mike's legacy. Not 12 kills, 12,000 lives. The Donovan Doctrine remains standard doctrine in modern aerial combat training. Fighter pilots learn aggressive engagement principles. Gunners on transport aircraft study psychological intimidation tactics. Even modern missile defense systems incorporate the concept of early engagement to disrupt enemy coordination. March 6, 1944 lasted 4 minutes. 1 tail gunner, 12 enemy fighters. The moment when defense became offense. When reaction became action. When one South Boston street fighter proved that survival doesn't come from hiding. It comes from making your enemy too scared to fight. Michael Donovan fired 2,000 rounds, destroyed 12 aircraft, saved 3,000 lives, changed warfare forever. Not because he was special, because he refused to wait for death to come find him. He went hunting first. If this story moved you, please like and subscribe. Your support helps us preserve these histories. Tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? We honor the courage of these men by remembering their names. Thank you for keeping their stories alive.
It is 1941. In Berlin, German strategic planners understand a reality that shapes every calculation about the Eastern War. Without the Romanian oil fields at Ploiesti, Germany's war machine grinds to a halt. The Soviet Union has just been invaded on June 22nd. The Blitzkrieg is rolling east, and already the calculations in Berlin have shifted. The tanks, the trucks, the aircraft, the ships, all of them consume fuel at rates that no German synthetic oil plant could ever match. German military planners understand the math. Germany's domestic production of synthetic fuel and natural oil combined produces only about 190 to 220,000 tons of oil per month. But military operations require between 300 and 350,000 tons monthly. The difference must come from Romania. Ploiesti produces between 150 and 235,000 tons per month, peaking in 1943. It is the difference between sustaining the war and losing it. It is, quite literally, the fuel of German strategy. But here is the problem that no one in Berlin fully grasped until it was too late. Controlling the oil fields and controlling the oil were two entirely different things. This is the story of how Germany's greatest strategic necessity became its greatest strategic failure, not because they couldn't conquer Romania, but because they couldn't keep it. And that failure would cascade through every year of the war until it became one of the hidden reasons Germany lost. Most people think Germany simply took Romania. The conventional narrative is straightforward. Romania was allied with Germany. Germany needed oil. Germany got it. But that story is incomplete. It obscures a fundamental reality that shaped the entire Eastern Front. The relationship between Germany and Romania was never a simple occupation. It was something far more fragile and far more complicated. And the moment Germany tried to tighten its grip on the oil fields, everything began to unravel. To understand how this moment came to pass, we need to go back to the early 1930s. Romania in the 1930s was a poor agricultural kingdom ruled by a monarch who played multiple sides. King Carol II maintained careful diplomatic relationships with both the Soviet Union to the east and the Western powers to the west. His prime minister, Nicolas Titulescu, actually had stronger ties to France and Britain than to Germany. But then everything changed in 1940. France fell in June. Britain was alone and seemingly on the verge of collapse. Suddenly, Romania faced a terrifying new reality. The Soviet Union was its only powerful neighbor that was not currently occupied or defeated. In June 1940, following the fall of France, the Soviet Union seized Bessarabia and northern Bukovina from Romania. This was a shock. This was territorial loss, and it fundamentally changed how Romanian leadership viewed its options. General Ion Antonescu was a military man who had been watching these developments with growing alarm. He saw a weakening monarchy unable to resist great power pressure. He saw territorial loss to the Soviet Union. He saw the rise of the Iron Guard, a fascist organization that was gaining power through nationalist and anti-Semitic appeals. In September 1940, Antonescu effectively overthrew King Carol. He became the strongman of Romania, and almost immediately he turned to Germany. Antonescu's calculation was straightforward and rational. Germany had defeated France. Germany had beaten most of Europe. The Soviet Union would be next. Romania needed a powerful ally, and Germany was the only one who could protect it from Soviet invasion. More importantly, Germany needed Romanian oil, and Antonescu understood that need gave him leverage. From Antonescu's perspective, Romania was offering Germany one of its most crucial strategic resources. In return, Germany would provide military protection against Soviet invasion and would presumably help Romania recover its lost territories in Bessarabia and Bukovina. This agreement seemed perfect on paper. Romania would supply oil to Germany. Germany would defend Romania militarily. The contracts were signed. The shipments began, and for roughly 6 months the system worked. German currency flowed into Romania. Oil flowed out toward Germany. Romanian military received German equipment and training. In June 1941, when Germany invaded the Soviet Union, Antonescu's decision seemed vindicated. Romania was on the winning side. The German army was smashing through Soviet defenses. By fall, the war seemed nearly won. Romanian troops advanced alongside German forces into Soviet territory. The oil contracts seemed to guarantee German victory and Romanian security. But here is where the political reality began to diverge from the strategic necessity. Germany did not take direct military control of the Ploiesti oil fields. Instead, the fields remained under Romanian ownership and Romanian military control. This was partly out of respect for Romanian sovereignty. Germany needed Antonescu's cooperation and didn't want to provoke a conflict that would disrupt the oil supply. It was also partly because Germany was stretched thin militarily. The invasion of the Soviet Union required enormous resources. Every German soldier sent to control Romania was a soldier not available for the front. On the surface, this made sense. Romania had an army. Romania had an interest in defending its territory and its resources. Why not let Romania handle the security of the oil fields? But this decision contained the seeds of future disaster. Romania had not fought a major industrial war. Romanian forces were adequate for internal security and for supporting German offensive operations. They were not adequate for defending critical infrastructure against determined assault. And more importantly, there was a fundamental contradiction at the heart of the arrangement. Germany needed maximum oil production from Ploiesti, but Romania, operating as a semi-independent ally rather than an occupied territory, had competing interests. Romanian military officers wanted resources diverted to defending Romanian territory and supporting Romanian operations. Romanian political leaders wanted to use the oil to develop Romanian industry and strengthen Romanian position. Romanian citizens wanted goods and services that the oil could provide domestically. These competing interests created constant friction that intensified as the war changed. From the perspective of Romanian military and economic planners managing oil production under German pressure, they faced an impossible calculus. Germany wanted maximum oil exports. This meant running the fields at peak capacity constantly, but peak capacity meant less maintenance. It meant older equipment being pushed harder. It meant accepting greater risks of accident and equipment failure. It meant that refineries were working at unsustainable rates. The structural friction between what Germany demanded and what Romania could physically deliver created a permanent crisis. Germany expected consistent maximum output. Romania delivered recurring shortfalls. Germany needed more, but more was not physically available without destroying the fields themselves. By late 1942, another complication emerged. The Soviet Union had recovered from the initial shock of invasion. The German offensives had failed to reach the oil fields or destroy Soviet capacity to wage war. The front had stabilized and then shifted unfavorably for Germany in the southern Caucasus, and Soviet military leadership began to understand that the Ploiesti fields were Germany's critical vulnerability. If Ploiesti could be destroyed or captured, Germany would face an impossible fuel shortage. Soviet strategic planners began to focus increasing resources on threatening the fields militarily. More importantly, American strategic planners understood this vulnerability as well. In August 1943, American bombers flew Operation Tidal Wave, a daring raid from North Africa with B-24 Liberators striking the refineries directly. By 1943, and increasingly through 1944, American and then Soviet bombing campaigns intensified against Ploiesti. This introduced a new pressure on the Romanian government. Defending Ploiesti now required resources that Romania did not have. The German Luftwaffe was supposed to provide air defense, but the Luftwaffe was being stretched across a 1,000-mile front. Pilot and aircraft losses were mounting. By 1943, there were often not enough German fighters available to protect Ploiesti from bombing. The fields were attacked repeatedly, refineries were damaged, production declined from its 1943 peak, and the Romanian government faced an agonizing choice: invest more resources in defending the fields, or accept declining oil production. This is where Antonescu's political position became precarious. He was being pressured from all sides. Germany demanded more oil, even as production fell. The Soviet Union was bombing the fields and advancing militarily toward them. The Romanian people were suffering from the demands of German alliance. The Iron Guard, which Antonescu had initially used but then marginalized, was still a political force that opposed his alliance with Germany. The Hungarian and Bulgarian allies of Germany were pursuing their own interests, sometimes at odds with Romanian interests. And crucially, Antonescu was beginning to understand something that the German High Command had not yet fully grasped: Germany was not going to win the war. The offensives in Russia had failed catastrophically. Stalingrad in January 1943 marked the symbolic and strategic turning point. The American and British forces were growing stronger. The Soviet Union was mobilizing its full industrial capacity. By late 1943, Antonescu was making private calculations that Romania's best interest lay in finding a way to exit the German alliance. But Antonescu faced an impossible constraint. Romania was not militarily powerful enough to defeat Germany. Romania could not simply announce its defection without inviting German occupation or German retaliation, and Romania's oil fields were too valuable for Germany to simply abandon. In fact, as German prospects for victory declined, Germany's dependence on Romanian oil became even more acute. The loss of the Ploiesti fields would be catastrophic. This created a paradoxical situation. Antonescu's strategic position became stronger even as his military situation weakened. Germany needed him more than he needed Germany. But Germany's desperation also made Germany more dangerous. In 1944, Germany made its critical mistake. Hitler decided that he could no longer rely on Antonescu's lukewarm commitment. He ordered the German military to prepare to occupy Romania directly and take complete control of the oil fields. The logic was clear to Hitler. If Antonescu was negotiating with the Allies or considering switching sides, then Germany had to physically control the fields to guarantee the oil supply. But this decision revealed the fundamental problem that had existed since 1941. Germany did not have the military resources to occupy Romania directly while fighting on the Eastern Front. If Germany sent the divisions needed to occupy Romania, it would have to weaken the front against the Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union was growing stronger every day. The math was impossible. In August 1944, the situation came to a head. Soviet forces under General Rodion Malinovsky were advancing toward the Ploiesti region from multiple directions. Antonescu understood that the Soviet army was about to arrive. He understood that Romania's only option was to switch sides. On August 23, 1944, he made his move. He dismissed the German-aligned government, announced that Romania was changing sides, and ordered Romanian military forces to stop fighting the Soviet Union and to begin fighting Germany. The sudden shift was shocking to the German command structure. German divisions that had been expecting Romanian cooperation suddenly found themselves fighting Romanian forces. German military personnel were captured. The entire German position in the Balkans became untenable. More catastrophically for Germany, the German military forces that had been occupying the Ploiesti region were now in the middle of a hostile country with no clear supply lines home. Germany had to withdraw from Romania, and as German forces withdrew, Soviet forces moved in. By September 1944, Soviet troops had occupied the Ploiesti oil fields. Germany's one of its greatest strategic resources, the one resource that Germany absolutely could not afford to lose, was now in Soviet hands. The fields were damaged but not destroyed. They would eventually become unavailable to Germany while being available to the Soviet Union. It was a geopolitical catastrophe of the first order. But the question that historians have debated for decades is whether Germany could have prevented this outcome. Could the fields have been defended? Could Antonescu have been controlled? Could Germany have maintained the oil supply? The answer requires understanding the deeper structural problem that had existed from the beginning. Germany's need for Romanian oil was so absolute that it made German strategy fundamentally brittle. Germany could not afford to lose Romania, which meant Germany could not afford to be too harsh in its demands. But Germany also could not afford to trust Romania completely, which meant Germany was constantly trying to increase its control. This produced exactly the kind of pressure that drove Antonescu towards switching sides. Alternative scenarios reveal the trap. If Germany had occupied Romania militarily from 1941 onwards, Germany would have had direct control of the oil fields. But Germany would have needed to garrison Romania with divisions that were critical for the Soviet front. On the Eastern Front, where losses mounted and territory was contested, every division mattered. Removing divisions to garrison Romania would have meant earlier German defeats on the Soviet front. It would have meant less offensive capability. It would have meant the Soviet Union reaching more territory, more resources, more industrial capacity. The math would have worked out the same way. Germany would have lost more resources to garrison Romania than it gained from more reliable oil supplies. If Germany had treated Antonescu as a true allied partner and trusted his commitment, Germany would have avoided the political crisis of 1944, but Germany would have been dependent on Antonescu's continued cooperation, and Antonescu's continued cooperation depended on Antonescu believing that Germany was going to win the war. Once that belief evaporated, and it evaporated after Stalingrad in January 1943, Antonescu's calculation changed. There was no outcome in which Germany could maintain reliable control of Romanian oil once the military situation turned against Germany. And the military situation turned against Germany almost immediately. The Blitzkrieg failed to defeat the Soviet Union in 1941. Germany was fighting a two-front war by 1942. German resources were being stretched across the entire continent. The decision to invade the Soviet Union was, in retrospect, a decision to lose the war. And losing the war meant losing the oil that the war depended on. This is the paradox at the heart of the Ploiesti story. Germany's strategy in the East was based on the assumption that the Soviet Union would be defeated in a matter of months. If that assumption had been true, then the Ploiesti fields would have been secure. Germany would have defeated the Soviet Union. Germany would have been the dominant power in Europe. Oil would have been available. Romania would have been an occupied or friendly territory in a German-dominated continent. But the assumption was wrong. The Soviet Union did not surrender. The Blitzkrieg failed. And once the Blitzkrieg failed, every day that Germany fought brought Germany closer to absolute defeat. And that defeat would mean the loss of every strategic resource that Germany depended on. From the Romanian perspective, this was equally catastrophic. Antonescu's calculation in 1941 was reasonable. He faced a hostile Soviet Union. Germany was the stronger power. Germany was winning militarily. An alliance with Germany offered protection. But Antonescu's calculation assumed that German victory was achievable. Once that assumption became invalid, Antonescu was trapped in an alliance that was dragging Romania toward defeat alongside Germany. His switch in August 1944 was not a betrayal. It was a rational effort to salvage Romanian independence from certain destruction. But it came too late to prevent Romania from being occupied by the Soviet Union and trapped in the Soviet sphere for the next 45 years. The broader significance of the Ploiesti story extends far beyond Romania. It demonstrates a fundamental truth about grand strategy in industrial war. Resource dependence creates vulnerability that cannot be overcome by military power alone. Germany needed oil. That need was acute and absolute. But the oil was located in a territory that Germany could not control militarily without sacrificing offensive capability elsewhere. Germany could not seize outright ownership of the fields from a politically volatile ally without risking immediate rebellion. Germany could station military units and flak batteries to protect the perimeter and airspace, but the day-to-day administration and operations remained in Romanian hands. There was no strategic solution to this problem. Germany could not conquer the Soviet Union quickly enough to secure victory before its allies began to waver. Germany could not maintain alliance relationships on the basis of temporary military success when that military success eventually failed. And Germany could not establish direct control of resource-producing territories without generating political opposition and diverting military resources away from decisive theatres. This is a lesson that echoes through military and strategic history. Power is not distributed evenly across territory. Some territories have resources that are critical to waging war, but those same territories may not be militarily defensible or may have populations and governments with their own interests. The stronger power can force temporary cooperation, but if the stronger power is unable to achieve decisive victory, that forced cooperation will eventually collapse. The weaker partner will eventually defect to the side that seems more likely to prevail. Antonescu was rational when he switched to the Soviet Union in August 1944. He was simply acknowledging what had become clear: Germany was going to lose, and Romania had to save itself. The story of Ploiesti also reveals something about the nature of military-industrial dependencies in the 20th century. In earlier eras, armies were largely self-sufficient. They could live off the land. They could move relatively slowly and carry supplies with them. But industrial warfare required fuel. Fuel was not something that an army could produce locally. Fuel had to be manufactured in industrial facilities located in specific places. Those places became bottlenecks. They became vulnerabilities. Germany's entire war strategy in the East was based on the assumption that it could capture these bottlenecks before they became critical. Ploiesti was one of the critical bottlenecks. But Germany could not capture it quickly enough. And once the Blitzkrieg failed, once Germany was locked into a long attritional war, the bottleneck became a fatal vulnerability. The numbers bear this out in devastating fashion. From 1942 onwards, Romania supplied between 60 and 80% of German oil consumption. When Ploiesti was lost in September 1944, Germany lost this supply immediately and completely. German fuel reserves, which were already depleted by years of intense warfare, dropped to crisis levels. The German Air Force, which was already struggling to defend German airspace against American and British bombing, became even less capable. German trucks and tanks ran out of fuel. The December 1944 offensive in the Ardennes, the Battle of the Bulge, was partly conceived as an attempt to seize enough fuel from Allied stocks to sustain further operations. Germany was not just losing, Germany was running out of fuel to lose. Historians and military accounts from the time reveal how acutely the German military understood this vulnerability. Officers at every level of the general staff, from field commanders to the armaments ministry, raised concerns about fuel shortages in late 1943 and 1944. Repeatedly, German military planners documented that without stable fuel supplies, sustained military operations would become impossible. By early 1945, the German Air Force was flying combat missions only when absolutely necessary, because fuel was too precious to waste on training or on operations that were not directly defensive. Pilots were not flying because their aircraft were grounded. Tanks were not moving because they were out of fuel, and it all traced back to the loss of Ploiesti in September 1944. If we trace this backward, if we ask why Ploiesti was lost, the answer is not that Romania was weak or that Antonescu was disloyal. The answer is that Germany could not achieve rapid victory against the Soviet Union. Germany could not conquer the entire Eastern European territory fast enough to secure a permanent position. The Blitzkrieg strategy was the entire foundation of German grand strategy. It assumed quick victory, rapid consolidation of territory, and permanent strategic advantage. When the Blitzkrieg failed, when the Soviet Union did not surrender in 1941, everything else cascaded from that failure. Antonescu understood this. He understood that Germany was not going to win. He understood that Romania could not survive a German defeat if Romania went down with Germany. His switch in August 1944 was an act of political rationality in the face of military catastrophe. He could not save Romania from Soviet occupation. The Soviet Union was too strong and too close, but he could save Romania from being conquered alongside Germany. He could position Romania as a country that switched sides when it became clear which side was winning. It did not work. Romania was occupied by the Soviet Union anyway, but Antonescu's attempt to salvage something from a catastrophic strategic situation reveals how completely Germany's position in Eastern Europe had collapsed. The occupation of Ploiesti by Soviet forces in September 1944 was not the final death blow to Germany, but it was a symbolic and practical representation of that strategic collapse. Germany had lost one of its greatest strategic resources. Germany was surrounded by enemies. Germany's allies were switching sides or being conquered. Germany itself was being bombed day and night. The outcome was no longer in doubt. The only remaining question was how much longer the war would continue and how much destruction would occur before Germany finally surrendered. When Antonescu committed to switching to the Soviet side in August 1944, he was acknowledging a reality that Hitler was still denying: the war was lost. The Ploiesti fields that Germany had fought to secure for 4 years had become a symbol of that loss. They had never been fully under German control. They had never been as productive as Germany needed. They had required a constant investment of German attention and German resources just to maintain existing supplies. And in the moment when Germany could least afford to lose them, they were lost. The deeper lesson of Ploiesti is that military strategy cannot overcome the constraints of geography, resources, and time. Germany needed to win the war in Eastern Europe quickly. If it won quickly, the resource problem would be solved. But it did not win quickly. It fought for almost 4 years. And as those years accumulated, as German strength declined and Soviet strength accumulated, the fundamental balance of power shifted. Antonescu was among the first major Eastern European leaders to recognize that shift and to act accordingly. Others would follow. By 1945, every German ally in Eastern Europe was either conquered, occupied, or actively fighting against Germany. This is the story that Ploiesti tells. It is not a story about oil fields and production numbers, although those matter. It is a story about the limits of military power in a world where resources are located in specific places and populations have their own interests. Germany could conquer Romania militarily. Germany could not control Romania indefinitely without the military resources to back up political demands. And Germany's military resources were exhausted in the effort to conquer the Soviet Union. The Ploiesti fields remained technically available to Germany only as long as Antonescu chose to maintain the alliance. The moment Antonescu chose to switch sides, the moment he recognized that Germany was going to lose, Germany lost the fields and lost the war. In the final months of 1944 and the opening months of 1945, German military commanders would repeatedly make the same bitter observation: if they had fuel, they could defend. If they could defend, they could hold territory. If they could hold territory, they could negotiate peace. But they had no fuel. And without fuel, every day brought Germany closer to total defeat. The reason they had no fuel was Ploiesti. The reason they had lost Ploiesti was because they could not conquer the Soviet Union quickly enough to secure it permanently. The reason they could not conquer the Soviet Union was because the Soviet Union was too large, too well-resourced, and too determined to accept defeat. And the reason they tried to conquer the Soviet Union in the first place was because Germany believed it could win. It could not. And Ploiesti fell with everything else.